It's February 18th, 2021. This is Rook. Those of us of Iranian descent have always known that our food is sumptuous, stellar, and sort of superior. But is Persian cuisine the new superstar on the scene? You can barely open Instagram without seeing a floral festooned fesenjoon or a savory selected sabzi polo. Food blogger and cultural investigator Azita Houshiar joins us for a feature chat today about cuisine, customs, and growing up in America, and then moving back to Iran. Plus, speaking of food, Chef Hoss is here, and he's going to explain the secret to the savory in your saffron. And a new edition of It's All Persian to us as well. This is Conversations from, to, and about the Iranian diaspora. I'm Jian Ghomeshi. This is Rook. Hi there, welcome to episode number 86 of Rook. Hope you're keeping well wherever you are tuning in from around the world. Salam dostan aziz, امیدوار هستم که خوب و میزون هستین. Hello, the fabulous Kyan.
Durud, Jian Jun.
Durud, Kyan Jun. Azita Houshiar, coming up in a few minutes. She's has this popular food blog and Instagram page called Fig and Quince. She's a great writer about Persian cuisine. I think she's just a great writer in general. And she did a very interesting TEDx talk in Tehran not too long ago. I want to ask her about the growing popularity of Persian food, especially in social media. Have you noticed that, is it just me, or like all of a sudden there's Persian food, the pictures of Persian food
a lot more
peppering
now.
Your Instagram?
Yeah, it's not just sushi and Indian food anymore.
That's right. And Thai food, it looks like Persian food may be the new hipster kid on the scene, right?
Yeah.
So even though it's not very new, but so I want to ask her about this. She was one of the kind of pioneering food bloggers when it comes to Persian cuisine. She's been doing it for a few years. To ask if in fact this is a moment for Persian cuisine, or if it's going to be a moment, if it's going to be the new trendy thing, or if it is already, as well as her story of she became a lawyer in America and then found her passion being a creative person working on Persian culture and food, and now she's moved back to Iran.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's some it's a very interesting story. Azita Houshiar joining us in just a few moments. I'm looking forward to talking to her. Hello, Groovy Shaya.
Hi.
How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
خوب هستی؟
خوبم.
فارسی بگم که بفهمی.
Sure, yeah, thank you.
And hello, Captain Reza. Welcome back.
Hello,
You have returned from the cottage of love and sex and hedonism.
Yes.
How was your Valentine's
TMI.
extravaganza?
It was fantabulous, to say the least.
There's a spring in your step.
Oh,
It's you feel like a young man again, don't you?
I feel loose as a goose and ready to mingle. No, I'm joking. But
You as a 33-year-old, you feel 31 now. You had such a
easily took a year and a half off, if not two.
Well, we missed you on the last edition of course, Savvy Roham was here. Savvy, but he's no substitute for the great Captain Reza. There's no captain. There was no captain of the ship.
Yeah, we didn't have a captain, Reza.
I know. What you guys do?
The ship was falling, sinking, if you will.
Ships don't fall.
Ships don't fall.
This elevated ship was falling. Yeah.
Oh, Kyan.
Leave me alone, guys.
We're off to a good start. We're on an ongoing mission to build a new audio-visual encyclopedia of Iranian diaspora identity, coming to you on SoundCloud. You may be listening to us there. Instagram, if you haven't joined us on Instagram, we are there. YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Castbox, and Telegram. We are accumulating followers each week. We're over 500,000 streams now, followers from around the world. You know what I say to that?
Do share.
Chamas Qaranot.
What? Is that Hebrew?
What? What is
Chamas
that?
Qaranot.
Okay, Shia, he's making up words now, right?
Now I have shared this with Shia, so let me tell you a story. This is I don't know if this is a word or not, but I'm out to make it popular again. I'm bringing back Chamas Qaranot.
Can you tell us what that means?
Can you try saying it?
Chamas qaragot?
No,
I just
no.
cleared my throat.
That's right. Just basically try clearing your throat. Chamas Qaranot.
Chamas
This is
qaragot.
something my dad would say.
No.
My beautiful, dear late father had all these sayings. And it was never clear whether they were real Persian words or not. I mean, he was 40 years older than me, and so he and my mom moved to England in the 1960s, like long before I was born. So his sayings and cultural practices were from even, as late as a few years ago when he was still alive here in Canada. They were from Iran of the 1950s, and this is what I learned. So I'll still be in situations where I'll be like, do study manzel man, and friends will sort of go, we don't say manzel, dude. It's khune, and I'll be like, what? I'm using some 1950s Farsi language because I got it from my dad, right? So my dad would say these things that I've sometimes explained to you guys that I never knew weren't words. Like for cat, he would say bishur khar, right?
What?
That's right.
Which dimension is
bishur khar, not word. So I would say, I'd be like in a group of friends, and I'd be like, oh, bishur khar, daddy, and they'd be like, what? What are you saying, right?
Talking about.
So chamas qaranot is something that my dad would say. And it sort of means this is how he would use it, I think. When there's an abundance of something big is happening. You go to a concert and there's it's thousands of people packed in. You go chamas qaranot, or like you're in a you're in a traffic jam and there's too much traffic. You go chamas qaranot. So I wanted to bring this to the show, and so I slowly go around. And the one thing I can say about the Rook team, it's a pretty literate team when it comes to Farsi, even though it's a young team. So I go to Ponta the artist. I mean, she's young, but she's really good with and I'm like chamas qaranot. So like just blinking her eyes, nothing, zero, right? Savvy Roham, nothing, So I come to Shia. Now Shia is like going to the top of the mountain to see the I mean, if Shia doesn't know it, and he perked up one eyebrow, he was like, I'm not sure this is a word, he's like but he didn't want to dismiss it. He didn't want to dismiss it, so I knew that there was possibilities. So I called my cousin in Calgary, who remembered my dad, of course, and my cousin uses this chamas qaranot as well. And I say, what's the deal? Is this a real word? And he says, yes, it's rooted in some kind of language from 100 years ago in Iran, but it means, now what do I know, right? I just like the sound of it, but Shia says, so then you looked it up on some.
Actually it's kind of chamas, it means 1/5, and qaran is like money, qirun. So chamas qaranot, it literally means that 1/5 of your money, which is related to some religious stuff. I mean, some religious rules. But I don't.
My dad wasn't really religious.
No, but I don't know what's the relation between chamas qaranot and, for example, huge traffic.
So it's Arabic.
No. I think it was. My cousin was explaining that it's something like. If you're giving me money, you should, that's not enough. Give more. Something like that. So you go, chamas qaranot, like, we've got all these followers, let's go. Come on, give us not just 1/5, give us all the followers. Does that would make sense?
Yes, I think that makes sense.
The reason I wanted to bring this up is because I'm learning that this Rook is quite a resource, because we say things now, and our audience has grown big enough that we hear from smart people in the audience who, of course, tell us we're wrong, usually, but police our language and explain things to us. So I'm thinking there's somebody out there who knows this chamas qaranot, right? but I also just want to use it all the time.
That just sounds like a lot of phlegm.
It's just going to be your family reaching out, your cousins. Nobody else knows what you're talking about.
No, somebody, listen.
There's someone out there.
I think there's somebody out there who is hearing this, who's going, oh, no, they're onto something here. And, we'll explain it to us. And if
Please write to us so we
there
can
is
say
a husband
he's
somewhere
not-
who's turning to his wife and is like, you see, I told you this is a real word.
you guys are so unimpressed with my Khamas Khanana.
I'm shocked.
I was looking
See,
for the...
Shia, though, he liked it. You were into
Oh,
it.
yeah,
You were
yeah.
like really,
I'm going-
That's why I love
The
Shia.
problem is I don't believe it yet. I want someone else to confirm this besides Shia and Jian.
Even if the word is not exist really, I'm going to use it from now on.
Okay, let's hear you use it.
Khamas Khanana. I want to use it like when I'm both happy and when I'm sad.
It just sounds like an angry word. I'm
You
like,
know,
Khamas Khanana.
My partner, cheats on me. Khamas Khanana.
See, it's-
Or on the other hand, I get a big gift. Khamas Khanana. It's all in the tone. I'm telling you, it's all in the tone.
I want to know the
We've
history
lost
of this
all
word.
non-Iranians who ever listened to this show. They're just
And
like,
most of Iranians.
and the Iranians.
It's hurting our ears.
I've lost the entire audience with one word. Speaking of the entire audience, before I lose you, we've launched our patrons page. We do really need your help. All right, this is if you are a listener of Rook and you like what you hear, you support our content, or you appreciate a platform dedicated to the connective tissue of Iranian diaspora identity, to that I say Khamas Khanat.
Just waiting for it.
Please, I know, I'm just going to be all over the poor Azita. How am I going to do the interview without?
Just killed her interview.
Please don't wait for others to keep us alive. All right, it's like we need your help. We don't want to turn this into a big commercial enterprise. $10 a month, or even $5 a month is helpful. It really is. It takes you a minute. Go to our website, rookmedia.com. Click on support us. Kyan, we have a new rock star.
Oh, do we?
Yeah.
Khamas Khanana.
Khamas Khanana. This is, every time someone becomes a patron for $50 a month, they get their hoodie, they get a bunch of things, but also we give them a shout out on the show. I'll also mention some of our BFFs later, but we call $50 a month a rock star, and $100 a hero, and a $250 a legend. But we have a new rock star. I really wanted to mention her because this is so sweet. Sarah Swanson, a non-Iranian fan of our program who lives in Michigan and works in the book business, and just really has become a real fan of Rook. And she's written in some letters to us. So thank you to Sarah Swanson, our newest rock star. Putting the Iranians to shame, a non-Iranian supporting this. The Iranian, it's like Jane Lewison and saying that the Golha project is supported by the British, the British government. It's like, where are the Iranians? But anyway, thank you so much to Sarah. And by the way, if you don't have to have your name mentioned, for the modest folks out there who prefer to become patrons and not get a shout out, that's okay too. There's a little button on there that says, don't mention my name, or I prefer to be anonymous, or something like that. But thank you to Sarah, and rookmedia.com. On our last show, we had a rock star from, I think it was the last
UAE?
show. Yeah, from Dubai, right? And we were surprised. We were like, do we have listeners there? So I did some digging. It turns out it's Khamas Khanat. It turns out
There's two. There's two people there that listen.
No. There's thousands.
Wow.
It turns out the UAE is the 11th largest market for Rook listeners in the world.
That's crazy.
I mean, 11 sounds low on the list, but if you think about the entire world, right?
Yeah.
It's way ahead of a bunch of European countries. I mean, it's one of our spots where there's a bunch of
Interesting.
listeners. Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
Khamas Khanana.
Khamas Khanana.
What else can you say?
Do you know the top 5 Rook countries?
Oh,
top
it keeps
5 Rook-
changing, doesn't it? Canada for sure.
Canada for sure.
Iran for sure.
Yes.
US.
Yes.
I mean, those are given.
Canada, US, Iran.
Germany.
Yes.
Australia.
Yes,
Yeah?
that's it. That's the
Okay.
top 5.
Do I win something?
No, actually, you have to become a patron.
Khamas Khanana.
That's right. It's used to express disappointment as well. I'm always a bit disappointed that the UK isn't there. I'm like, where's
Good
the country of my
point.
birth?
There's
You know?
Persians there. Where are they?
We interview them. We
Or
always have
even
people on from the UK,
That's right.
but we Canada, US, Iran, Germany, Australia are our countries so far in that order.
Where is UK in
Number
that?
6. It's
okay, so they're there.
and then Sweden. There's a whole bunch of.
Oh, yes,
there's a few
there's a
thousand
lot.
listeners, regular listeners
that
in
makes sense.
Sweden as well. So I don't know what we have to do to get the UK mobilized.
I'm telling you, it's my British accent. I got to throw that on every
that
episode.
might be it.
Yeah.
All right. How you doing, Captain Reza?
I'm great.
Still happy? Still.
Hey.
He's like a new man.
Year of the year.
Came back after
Yeah,
the
he's
orgy
smiling.
weekend, and he's.
Oh my God.
I don't know what you were doing up there. He was
a
like,
very-
he was
Squirrel.
smiling. He was
He's a
handing out
committed man.
gifts. He had cigars. You know,
I just keep seeing that huge flower bouquet balloon thing in
yeah.
the
Still
lobby,
there.
and I just want to cry that I don't have
these
it.
balloons won't die. The balloons
Yeah.
that Captain Reza's
There
girlfriend
were
got.
even more
You know what you did,
surprises.
Reza? You made
Huh.
me start a fight with my boyfriend
You're
on
joking.
Another
Valentine's
one?
Day. No, I'm kidding. I'm
Another
saying.
one?
Oh,
because
Reza,
I
did you hear about this?
No.
You didn't listen
there
to
was
our
a
show.
Fight?
Yeah.
You were so
I- No, I
consumed in your weekend.
I have to see.
As we explained on our show on Monday, Kyan preemptively started a fight with her boyfriend on Saturday. Valentine's Day was on Sunday. On
know why?
Saturday, she started a fight because she
Kyan.
anticipated that the gifts wouldn't be good enough. The poor guy ends up like, and the weirdest part about this, I've been thinking about this all week. People have been talking to me about it. The weirdest part of it was, I said, he ends up getting her jewelry, getting like serious jewelry, and getting her chocolates and like flowers, like everything on the list, of some
You're supposed to get-
and he cooks her dinner.
yeah.
Oh
And then
my
I say to
God.
Kyan, well, wow, what did you get him? And she says, nothing.
My love.
Nothing.
Wow.
What kind of a deal does she have with this
but
guy?
Valentine's Day in general is usually for the women, is it not? It's a celebrating
Is it?
love. Well, to my understanding, I mean, Reza's a rare
understand it
case.
wrong.
I don't know what you're doing right
No,
in your
for us
relationship.
it was a mutually celebrated event.
You're equal partners.
But
You
the
both give each
flowers and
other. You mean you've never given a guy a Valentine's
For
Day card?
Valentine's, no,
Wow.
like a
See,
card.
she's
Okay.
got it.
I'm offended, but what you just said. Yeah.
I would give you a Valentine's card, Shaya.
No, thank
You're
you.
different.
But Valentine is for love. Love is a mutual. It doesn't have
But
any
I feel
sex
like the
That's
guys.
right.
But see, I feel like the guys don't care, and I thought I didn't care either until I got into a relationship. And you know what? You know what the difference is? Instagram. So I would see all these videos of people, for example, Reza away on this romantic weekend, and I would preemptively get
What
angry.
kind of an antiquated idea about men? The guys don't care. You think that we don't care? You think if we're in a relationship, we don't want to hear as well that you love us, or
Of
you want?
course, but how do you show that? Give the guy a flower? Isn't that a little bit
No,
feminine?
no, I love flowers.
I mean,
I
Reza
buy them
does-
for myself all the
Okay.
time.
All right. Okay. Lesson learned.
Reza's, yeah, but anyway, between the two of you, you guys both have what are we doing wrong, Shia? These guys are just like collecting, and,
Oh, man.
but Reza does stuff in return. I mean,
I
he's-
got a set of nice flowers for her that
Okay.
you got
All right.
they're,
But
they're not
okay.
called a set of flowers.
No,
Reza.
But okay, it was also his
Not somebody
birthday.
blind.
I keep
Right.
forgetting. It was his birthday last
Right,
week, and
right.
that's why he
Right.
got flowers and balloons.
Right.
Not for Valentine's
That's
Day.
right. That is
so
very,
did
very
you get
correct.
anything for Valentine's Day?
Of course I did.
What
I
did you
got
get?
her.
No, what did she get you?
A box of flowers. She didn't get me anything.
Okay,
for
there we
Valentine's
go.
Oh, she didn't get you anything
For
for
Valentine's
Valentine's
I
Day.
settle
no,
my
I got
case.
her.
There you
I
go.
don't know.
I got her for Valentine's Day, but she got cake, I think. Well, no, that was for my birthday. What am I talking about?
I mean,
Exactly.
I've always it's always been an exchange. If
Well,
you're
no
in a
one is-
relationship,
not everybody can be Jian Ghomeshi.
that you better get me some flowers.
You better give me some flowers, man.
All right, fine, okay. Well, anyway, I mean, so how's the rest of the week been?
It's been great.
Yeah. Did he hear the conversation we had on the
He
air?
has. It's become a funny
We
story.
defended
now.
him.
We
I
had
mean-
our first fight, so in a way, it's poetic.
Oh,
Oh, that was your
that's
first
so
fight.
Yeah, that was our first.
The first fight was you getting mad at him
For no reason.
For no reason.
And it will be the rest of the fights you'll have. It'll always be you getting.
It'll all
mad
be
at
downhill.
It's we're going to get to Azita Houshiar and talk about Persian cuisine, Persian culture. Chef Hoss coming up in just a little while, but first, it's Thursday. You know what that means. She's a dear friend, a diaspora, a blend, a gym fanatic, a kook who can be erratic, but lovable, smart, and funny, and on a journey to discover what we actually discovered. Here we go, Bachaha. It's all Persian to us with Kyan Nademi. All right, Kyan Nademi, what do you have for us this week?
Well, we are now deep into the winter season here in Toronto, as you can just look outside the window as it's snowing very vigorously. Freezing temperatures and frigid cold air forcing us to hibernate and cover up as much as possible. Well, I tell you, thank God we can fully cover up our legs with a pair of... your legs? Pair of
underpants.
Snowsuit?
Pants?
Pants, trousers.
Yes, pants. There we go. Trousers, slacks, pantaloons.
We invented trousers?
Breeches. Can I
to
the point where
I got excited.
The big aha moment of yes. They're also known as knickerbockers if you didn't know that already, but better known as pants. Yes, this innovative creation was first invented by, you guessed it, the Persians. And I don't know about anybody else, but I've basically been living in my sweatpants throughout this pandemic, so I'm feeling especially grateful for this invention. Yes, you heard me. The fabulous Kyan has turned into the pathetic Kyan. But it's okay, Shia. You know why?
Why?
Because this too shall pass.
Oh, nicely
Snap.
done.
Yes. All right.
All right, so remember how Persians invented high heels for horseback riding?
Do
you remember that?
How could we forget?
That was 2 weeks ago.
For the purposes of horseback riding. That was the pretext. I think Persian men wanted to invent high heels and talked about horseback riding.
Yeah, well, as it turns out, they invented pants for the exact same reason.
Wow.
Yeah.
This horseback riding, it
was a thing.
It delivered a lot for
It
us.
did.
Yeah, we invented a lot of things.
Revolutionary.
So pants, presumably because you straddle a horse, you can't be... what did Persian men wear before the... skirt?
Like loincloths?
I guess so.
No, like the
toga? What were we... Shia, you know ancient history. What were they?
Actually, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe some... do you know deshtashe?
Yeah, like dress, like they were dresses. Like
Yes,
long,
Right.
yeah,
Long
dresses.
dresses.
Yeah.
And the first guy who was like... asp nemiram ba in I need some pants.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
So they had to figure out a way to comfortably ride horses.
Right.
And also, remember how I talked about Wonder Woman and the Amazons being based on horse riding warrior women from ancient Persia? That was I think a month ago. Well, these same women were depicted wearing pants.
Wow.
It all comes full circle.
The women invented the pants.
Well,
that would be a good
the whole
twist.
the funny part is that pants throughout history have been known as a masculine kind of clothing, but in ancient times, warrior women.
Persians, we were so cool back then.
We were cool.
The
What
men invented
happened?
the high heels. The women invented the pants.
The women
voted first back then.
Well, it's
right?
actually not known if the women invented the pants. It was just known that
they
women
wore
wore the
them. Yeah,
pants.
all right.
Yeah. So pants made their first appearance in recorded history in the 4th century BC, when they were worn by both men and women in ancient Persia. Depictions of pant-wearing Persians can be seen on the walls of our very own Persepolis in modern-day Shiraz. And depictions of Persian women specifically wearing pants were found on ancient Greek artifacts, where they're depicted on horseback fighting in battle. I brought this up back on episode 76, actually, when I talked about Wonder Woman and the Amazons being based on Persian female warriors.
So in the Greek historic kind of drawings, the Persians are wearing pants.
Yes,
on
and
their horses.
they depicted these Amazon women as they referred to them, and it turns out they're Persian warrior women. Yeah, so speaking of the Greeks, they used to actually make fun of the Persians for wearing such ridiculous and barbaric, multicolored bags for lower limbs, as they used to refer to pants. Well, if only they knew how ridiculous wearing a toga in public is considered today. So joke's on them.
No offense to our Greek fans. By the way, the togas were Roman. Not Greek.
But the tunics.
But the Greeks wore them as well,
wore
right.
tunics. Yeah, I mean, it's a different word.
But listen, I feel like we have to do some damage control with our Some of my best friends are Greek. No, really. I mean, this is the ancient history. We don't want to relitigate the movie 300. We all had took our sides. Okay.
Yeah. So, but in ancient times, it was a different story. We've moved a long way, but
yes, thank you for bringing that back, Kyan. Ancient
just reminding
enmities,
you.
Yes.
So back to the Greeks, they were also horrified at the fact that both men and women wore the exact same thing while riding on horseback. To their disgust, this signified equality. The women moved as freely and as actively as the men. How barbaric. Can you imagine?
Yes.
So as I've mentioned on previous episodes, the Persians were known as skilled horse riders. As such, pants were considered complete lifesavers for those riding on horses all day. This invention served a very important function. Do you know what? Do you know what it did?
Riding horses?
Yeah. Well, yes. What did it help?
Besides that, it helped...
sunburn? I don't know.
It helped the ability to have children?
No.
Okay, I'm not talking about skinny jeans. These were like loose-fitted pants. So
they're no good to me then. I was thinking they were a modern sort of slim cut.
Get real, Jian.
Wait a minute. So what's the question? The question is what
did it help with horseback riding?
What did the pants help with? Well, dexterity. You make sure But
okay,
actually,
so
if you had no pants on, you'd be able to...
Well, let me paint a picture for you. You're out on a horse all day long. Like, imagine days you're on a horse. Throughout the desert, you're just, what do you... Okay, so let me tell you straight up.
In the desert? What kind of pants were they wearing?
So this...
What's that, Shia?
What does it in English?
Sweating?
When you sweat and then it burns.
Well, yeah. Actually, you're on the right track.
Right.
So it prevented chafing of the legs.
Oh.
Yes.
Not
indeed.
They probably said that back then, Gio.
That's right.
Yeah, it's
the appropriate saying from 4 BC.
You didn't wear your pants. That's why your leg is like...
Listen, we're going to find out the exact... I feel bad. We're bastardizing this poor expression of my father. But it is useful for any occasion. Yes.
Yeah, so eventually this fashion spread throughout Asia, then Europe, and now around the world. And in modern times, as you know, skinny jeans is the new way to...
Yes, people wear pants. Yes.
Even the Greeks eventually sucked it up and threw on a pair of good old
Settle down with the anti-Greek screed here.
To be clear, I love my Greek friends as well. Painting out the history books and what really did happen.
Okay.
So first came the pants, then the high heels. Ah, the irony. So while countries like, for example, France kept a 200-year ban on women wearing pants in public, which was only lifted in 2013, by the way, let it be known that Persia was one of the first nations in ancient times to adopt true feminism, where women wore the pants and men wore the heels. It's all Persian to us.
Thank you very much, Kyan.
You're welcome.
Sorry, did you say 2013?
Yeah.
So until 2013,
it was a ban that was set.
It was actually like
there was an actual ban that they had to reverse. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It is an interesting juxtaposition with the rules and regulations of modern day Iran. That's for sure.
Yes, it's
right?
The paradox of Iran.
Kyan, thank you. Well done. You've startled us again with your incredible discoveries and educational information. Thank you for this. The fabulous Kyan, Groovy Shia, Captain Reza. You'll be back to join us with Chef Hoss in just a little while. Let's get to our featured guest. My featured guest today is an Iranian-American writer, visual artist, and elapsed lawyer who is deeply proud of her Iranian heritage and passionately shares her wisdom about Persian food. Azita Houshiar is perhaps best known these days as a food blogger. On her popular blog and Instagram page, Fig and Quince, she writes about Persian culture and shares modern interpretations of delicious and authentic Persian cooking recipes. Her work has been seen in various publications, including the New York Times. Azita was born in Tehran and moved to the United States at the age of 15. She studied law, passed 3 bar exams, but only practiced law in New York City for a brief time. Rather, she has found her calling in creative work. In fact, Azita has written and illustrated a short story called The Zigzag Girl, based on her own variety of career paths. She makes collages, animated GIFs, needlepoints, and styles food, and she did a TEDx talk in Tehran not too long ago, and now lives between Tehran and the DC area in the US. Given the fact that she was one of the first food bloggers writing about Persian cuisine in the diaspora, she is a good candidate to ask about what seems to be a growing trend of recognition and interest in Persian food. And right now, Azita Houshiar joins me from Washington, D.C. today. Hello.
Hi, Jian. I'm a little bit speechless after that intro. I don't know if I agree with wisdom, but thank you so much. That was a lovely.
Am I speaking to the painter Azita, or the food blogger Azita, or the lawyer Azita? I can't keep track. Which one am I talking to today?
That's a good question. It's actually something that I ask myself a lot of times. But, I think I was born in a different generation that I belong to, because I think Generation Z, the Zoomers, they kind of have this love for technology. They hop from job to job. They do different things. And that's really at heart. I'm kind of like this magpie. I love different shiny things that attract me a lot, and I kind of want to delve into. So I'm kind of passionate about a lot of things. But I think deep down, I'm really just somebody who likes to communicate and express myself, and that's what it boils down to.
I'm happy to be talking to you, Magpie.
Thank you so much.
You said something in your TED talk that you did in Iran, in Farsi, that really stuck with me. You said food is not just part of a culture or part of culture, it is culture. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Well, I think every culture is interwoven with the food, because it's the way that we nurture each other. We celebrate milestones, we celebrate rituals, and it's kind of like, I like to call food the edible expression of a culture. You can learn a lot about almost any society from the way they serve food or the interactions that they have with food. So I don't know if I'm being eloquent about it, but that's really what I meant.
So it follows that we learn about ourselves and our history from food, memories, nostalgia, thoughts, family values, all of that.
One of the way to kind of you have nostalgia in an interesting way is through the food of your culture. Experiencing like either food that you experience and brings back memories of how you had it in your homeland, or you try to replicate it. And that's why in pretty much every major city where they have an infusion of immigrants, you find these communities that are built around food, like Chinatown, Koreatown, Japantown, Little India, Little Italy. With Iranians, we have, the community in Los Angeles that infamously is called Tehran, stuff like that. And these are communities where immigrants can go there and basically taste their culture and experience their culture, and also share their culture with anybody else as well who wants to have an inkling about, okay, what are these people about,
Well, when it comes to Iranians, especially though, we like to talk about our food. It's something that can bring us on the same page. You've talked about how your dad, for example, was always quite a reserved Persian man, but if you got him talking about Persian food, he would really open up, right?
Yeah, I think that goes back to the essence of food, I think, as food being a unifying concept, a very friendly subject. It's like primal, it's passionate, and because it's a unifying theme. It's something that people do, like they open up, like there are no red flags associated with it. And it's also something that you don't have to necessarily have an informed opinion. Your opinion is an informed opinion. It is your experience of that food. So you don't have to, like, let's say, you only can talk about quantum physics if you've studied it. But all of us have memories and experiences and just sensations with food that we want to share. Yeah.
There are red flags when you cross the traditional recipes a little bit. Like when my mom, I've got this thing where I make korma sabzi and then I make it spicy. And my mom's like, why have you made just the korma sabzi spicy? That's not korma sabzi, So I think there's those kinds of red flags, but I think they're relatively benign. Iranian.
Yeah, that is true, and I'm also like a mixed mind about that. A part of me, like, I'm like very much like I want to keep things authentic, like, but at the same time, food evolves. I mean, there's a famous cookbook in Iran right now, Ashpazi Sirta Piyaz, A to Z, written by a famous translator, Ustad Najaf Bandari, who recently passed away, actually, sadly. He talks about how we never, like, Persian food did not have any tomato in it. So so before tomato, we only used turmeric, and our food was kind of like yellowish in color.
Yes,
and
yes.
then tomato came in, and now tomato has usurped that. And some people to this day, they are upset by that, including Ustad Najaf Bandari. But, you know, at the same time, food evolved. Or if you look at some of our stews and everything, the food actually did evolve. It didn't exist per se
This is something
exactly
that
as it does now.
Chef Hoss talks a lot about on this show, and I was actually shocked to find out that tomato had only existed in our khoresht in the last 200 years, because it seems like such a staple now of every Iranian dish, you know. So that is, you're right, that's an example of the evolution, right?
Yeah, fusion, evolving. But at the same time, I personally love when people share the food of different cultures and experiment with it even. But what I don't appreciate, and I try to like kind of actually be a little bit more neutral about it, are things that kind of borderline on cultural appropriation or taking unwarranted leaps with food. Like, for example, a while ago, like in the Washington Post, writing about Persian rice, had written about like, why do you need to wash rice? It's not dirty laundry. And that just really pissed me off so badly, because I was like, you have no clue what you're talking about, you know? So, I mean, it's different if you kind of like, I mean, cooking in and of itself is a creative endeavor. I mean, just when you think about even how we eat certain things, aren't you like astonished? Like saffron is like my go-to example. Like, look at these flowers and say, oh, I'm going to like, you know, take the little pollens and then grind them and make this amazing spice with it. Like, food is creative. There's something very ingenious, innovative in it.
For the non-Iranians out there who don't have parents or moms who wash the rice first, and so they've just assumed that that's the way to do things. Given that you're the champion food blogger and podcaster, can you explain why washing the rice is important first?
Well, for one thing, it's very therapeutic. I think it's like a very beautiful ritual. It's kind of like Iranian food. We have a lot of like masterpieces, but something that I think all of us are very proud of is our polo, vacholo, and the way Iranians make rice. Yeah, our rice is like unique. Like, I don't think anybody else makes rice the way Iranians do. Yeah. So yeah, like rice, the way Iranians make it, where every grain is separate and fluffy and pillowy, and just it doesn't become this messy, starchy goo. It takes some effort.
We are so
so
judgmental though. Like, there's always that moment where you go over to a non-Iranian friend's house who's cooked, and they bring out the rice, and they're like, so how do you feel about the meal? And you're like, yeah, great. And you're looking at the rice, and it's like stuck together, minute rice.
Exactly.
You know, you're like, how dare they? What have they done? So, as I said in the intro, I want to draw from your wisdom as a food blogger. I mean, I feel like about Persian food. I feel like grappling with our complicated identity, especially in the diaspora, and in a sea of stereotypes and prejudice that has been out there about Iranians, that our cuisine is something that we are genuinely and universally proud of. But you've also said it's a salve for our love-hate relationship with ourselves. What do you mean by that?
What I'm saying is just my opinion. So I'm not talking on behalf of all Iranians, but my general impression is that talking about Iranians as a society, I think we're very hard on ourselves. I think we almost have like a polar attitude or identity when it comes to us. On the one hand, we're a very proud nation. We're proud of so many things. And, we feel like we're so great about them. And at the same time, on the other side of it is we are super, super critical of ourselves, either individually or as a society, our history, all of that. And some of it is founded, some of it is unfounded. But yeah, when it comes to food, I think you would be hard pressed to find people to sit there and gripe about like tadik, polo khoresh, sharbat. You know, these are all like intrinsically, these are things that are delicious. And I've always thought that, we Iranians have a saying that we think we're all like poets and honar nazd Iranian ast o bas, and unlike the image that we have outside of Iran, Iranians are really bohemian. They're like hedonistic. They love poetry. They like to have a good time. They like beautiful things. I mean, it's in our literature. It's in our buildings. It's in the way, have you seen the architecture of the houses? Like, with the fountains and the pools and the nightingales and the weeping willows. So our food is very poetic, the ingredients of it, when you think about it, like, from cardamom and saffron and rose water, using rose petals. I think our cuisine is one of the very few cuisines in the world that we actually use flowers in our food, to garnish food, to like, add a beautiful touch to food. And we also, our cuisine, also one of the things that I love about Iranian food, not as a patriot or as a nationalistic, but just like as somebody who enjoys delicious things, I love that signature flavor of like tart and sweet flavor of our food. Like a lot of our khoreshes, you mix like pomegranate paste, which is tart, with like, something a little bit sweet, and they're like plums. And this mixture, in every spoonful, you get like these this dichotomy of taste and flavors, which again also takes me back again to Iranians, which our culture is a dichotomy. Even it's like that whole, light and dark and poets and whatnot. I mean, I'm straying now from the main subject.
No, but it's so clear just listening to you that the sense of pride is there, of just like, and that is very, when I reflect upon Iranians, it's not just that we like our cuisine, we're proud of there's no Iranian who's going to be teaching someone about Tahdig and is going to go, and this is Tahdig. It's like, and this is Tahdig. Huh? like we're like so proud of what we have. And that generalizes to some other cultures that you talked about it, where the diaspora communities gravitate towards food in Chinatown and Koreatown, etc. There's a new series on CNN that has debuted with Stanley Tucci exploring Italian food, and I think it's supposed to be about Italian culture or something, but it's all rooted in food, and so it'll be like, and then we went to the South Coast and found a tomato, and you can feel how proud he is of this Italian food. And of course, Italian cuisine is beautiful, but it is that is the kind of relationship that we have as well, right?
Well, I mean, yes and no. I think, again, it's one of those things that maybe you need to have the distance to be able to see the majesty of certain things, or to appreciate some things. You know how, like, they say, like, when you miss something, it's like when somebody goes away, that's when you miss them. I think a lot of Iranians in Iran don't necessarily appreciate the treasure trove of Persian food. I think that perception is definitely changing. It has been changing in the last few years, but I mean, a lot of times, like, they kind of like take it for granted. It's easy to take for granted what you have like on a daily basis, or you think nothing of it. It's when you kind of have a little bit of a distance from it, or you kind of gain the perspective of experiencing different foods, and you're like, well, like, yeah, French food is awesome, Italian food is wonderful, every food is wonderful, but our food, I'm not proud of it because I'm Iranian. I appreciate it as somebody who's a lover of things that are beautiful and enchanting. Again, going back to the magpie, I love that, like we have a rice that's called jeweled rice, and it actually looks like something that's.
But by the way, the flip side of what you just said is true as well, in terms of the proximity to the food, etc. Because oftentimes Persian food, I've noticed outside of Iran, especially in communities, in places where there isn't a huge community. I mean, now you can find all kinds of inventive restaurants in Toronto, say, that are creating a tapestry of different kind of Persian cuisine. But for the most part, it's like kebabis. It's like kebab becomes the equivalent of Persian food. Whereas, from what I understand, in Tehran, there's these places that are doing 1,000 different versions of tachin, and and so there's actually more creativity back in Iran than there is in the diaspora sometimes.
Well, I went back to Iran for the first time about 6 or 7 years ago, and it's just a marvel. I remembered going to bazaars as a kid, right? But it's a different thing going back there as an adult, and there is so much sensory a wealth of sensory experiences. It's like going into Alibaba's cave, like with all of these wonderful things, like just like the spices and the way they pile all of these like amazing spices and different types of spices. Or one of the examples I like to use a lot is just like the bread. Like I remembered sangak bread and taftoon and lavash. But then when
excuse me,
barbari,
yeah.
I forgot. Yeah, that's
Please,
my favorite too.
let's see
Actually.
it. Yeah.
Exactly. But then, like, you know, when you travel like from one city to the other, you realize that like every city, and practically not just every city, every town, every village has its own special bread. Like they have, there's really a wealth of an unbelievable wealth of types of food in Iran. I mean, I talked about this in my talk as well, which is that like I went to the food market in Babelsar, and these women had made all of these like homemade pomegranate paste or plum paste, and each one of these things was just like marvels that, you know, meanwhile the woman who's made it is sitting on the ground, you know, offering it with no pretensions. It's just like looks like any old thing. And this is something that, let's say, if a hipster in Brooklyn started a kiosk and was selling these things, it would just like be like, you know, everybody would be raving about it.
Right.
Yeah. So
you know, this trip you took back to Iran, and then you end up doing the TED Talk. You said you felt homesick. And that was one of the reasons you wanted to return to Iran, and you hadn't been there for, you know, over 3 decades. Homesick is quite something for someone to say who hasn't lived somewhere for 35 years. I found that curious, that you would be homesick for a place after spending most of your life living and working in America. Tell me what it was to go back there, what you discovered about yourself.
I mean, I want to tell you so many stories. I don't know where to begin. I did this funny thing when I lived in San Francisco. I was like pining to go to Iran, and I would look at the globe and I would like kiss the part of the globe that was Iran. And then I would laugh at myself. I mean, this is like after like I hadn't been in Iran for like over 10 years. I would daydream about like my uncle, when we lived in Iran, my uncle who had studied in Germany, he drove all the way from Germany in a car back then when you could. And I always like thought that was the coolest thing ever. Mm-hmm. So in my mind, I kind of like daydreamed about like, would it be possible? Can I go to Europe, get a car and drive to Iran? Stuff like that. I daydreamed about it. And I like, you know, but at the same time, I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of like you can't explain why you love something or why you feel a certain way. I'll tell you another story, actually, if I may. I remember being in school in Iran, and we were studying French history, and we were studying Napoleon Bonaparte, and we got to the part where he was exiled. And I remember, like, I distinctly remember thinking, what a lame punishment. So that's all they did. They just said you can't live in France. Like, that is so lame. And then it wasn't until like you basically experience something that is approximation of being exiled, whether it's voluntary or involuntary, and you just realize that for me, it was definitely something that I felt to the core of my being, because again, like I was proud of being Iranian. I always have felt that I am an Iranian. I never lied about being from Iran. Even when we first moved to the US, the hostages happened and it wasn't fun identifying as being from Iran. So I don't know.
But Azita, you've also said that going back to Iran killed nostalgia for you. No, which is really important, because you're speaking kind of dreamily about Iran, but you get back there. I mean, we had Fadi Shafinouri on the show not too long ago, and the great young musician from Texas, and you know, he's growing up in America, and he's dreaming of going back to Iran, a place where he's really going to fit in, you know, and I can't wait to get to Iran. He gets to Iran, and he's hanging out in Tehran, and he's feeling all proud of himself, and then he realizes that the other Iranians there see him as a tourist. You know, he's like, no, but I'm Iranian. They're kind of like, sure, pal, you just turned up here a few weeks ago and you think you're Iranian. So tell me about killing nostalgia for you when you get back to Iran, what that means.
I did want to go and see what is life like there. What does it mean? And it was so weird being on a plane on my first return back to Iran with the Lonely Planet Guide to Iran in my suitcase. It felt strange going back to my homeland with a guidebook, but I needed it, you know? Right. And the identity part is something that it was an eye-opener for me. I did go there on the wings of nostalgia, driven by nostalgia. And it did kill nostalgia for me, because nostalgia is like, pure, profound sensation, but its root literally is in the past. It's kind of like Miss Havisham sitting in her wedding clothes 30 years after she's been jilted. So while I sympathize and you feel it, like it's a sincere sensation, but nostalgia may be dead, but some of the things that I just love and I cannot help loving till the day I die about Iran and my country. And again, I'm like getting a little bit emotional about it. Is that like, you know, like to this day, like when I see the mountains and they have the snowy peak, I kind of crumble. It's enchanting to me. Like when I see the crows or whatever, like that doesn't go away. So nostalgia goes away, but it was wonderful to kind of go in there. And when I returned, I was determined that I didn't want to be a tourist, and I wanted to lay claim to saying that I am an Iranian and I want to experience what it feels like to really live here, you know? If that makes sense. Did I answer you?
What the most curious part of it is, or a very interesting part of it, is that there are people who are in Iran, who have grown up in Iran, they work in Iran, their families are in Iran, their loved ones are in Iran, they love Iran, so they're not going to leave, and that's understandable. But you know, we regularly talk on this show, especially since we're dealing with the diaspora, to the scores of people, exponentially so, as you know, millions now who have left Iran, especially in the last 2 decades, want to leave Iran, need to leave Iran, are sad about Iran, had to escape Iran. So it's usually the opposite trajectory to yours, right? You're picking up from America, where you presumably, after, you know, a few decades, and you're a lawyer and you're a writer and you've been in the New York Times, you can fit in just fine, and you're picking up and going back in the other direction. That says a lot about how much Iran has resonated for you. And so that's the question of why you would pick it over the United States.
I mean, initially when I went back, I thought, you know, I realized I've met a number of people who have done the exact same thing as I have done. Like, I haven't been like a snowflake. I actually have a number of friends in Tehran where they kind of like packed up and went back to Iran, either temporarily or permanently. It's kind of like a calling, I say. So there's no question that I belong there. But once I was there, people told me that I spoke with an accent, and they did think of me as like an other to some extent. Iranians are don't want to say nosy. That's not fun. But they ask very direct questions, things that you wouldn't, like, let's say in American society, you don't ask people, how old are you? How much money do you make? What do you, those are things that you don't ask. But in Iran, once you go back, people ask you, they feel free to ask you whatever they damn well please, which is fine. It's part of the culture. But one of the questions I was asked again and again and again is like, why have you returned? Why are you here? Like, almost with the, not being suspicious, but kind of like really bewildered. And, and it didn't make sense to just like say, but
Azita, Iran will be there. I mean, it's not, you know, so that your choice to want to live there, it is feeding your soul in a way. I'm not arguing with you. I think it's great if you're feeling great about being there. You know, and I get it. I was born in London, England. I left when I was 8. Why would I? But when I go back to London, every single time I go, oh, this is my home. I remember this. You know, you just feel it immediately. But I don't sort of question myself as to why. I mean, I sort of understand why I live in Canada. I've lived in New York. That's my life now. I'm not necessarily, and we make those choices. There's a vast difference between the contemporary United States and the situation in Iran right now that leads a lot of Iranians, as you know, including the people working on this show, to have to leave Iran despite their love for it. So that's the question, right? And that's why they're bewildered in Iran as well, going, okay, so what is it? What's the magic sauce that wants you to stay here?
Well, for me, it kind of happened organically, but honestly, it had its roots in kind of like I manifested it to happen organically. Because the first time I went back, again, like I said, I was a tourist. I was just like all, you know, gawking at everything, touched by everything. And I everything was new to a huge extent. So a part of me just wanted to like experience the real life there. And, you know, TEDx happened. And once I was in Tehran, because of preparing for TEDx, I kind of fell in with a lot of this crowd that were like in the startup scene, and a lot of like really interesting, super cool, really intelligent, awesome people, exactly the kind of people that I wanted to like get to know. And it just so happened that I had this opportunity to have a startup. Also in the back of my mind, it's something that I had wanted to just go and explore the food and culture of Iran. Like I would love to like at some point write about it, and I did, and I wanted to like experience it firsthand. So in some ways there is no mystery. And also sadly, I have to say, I don't necessarily feel that Tehran is home, but by that token, I'm one of those people, maybe I'm a little bit nomadic, and there's also like this wonderful feeling. Like I remember when the first time I had gone back, like the windows were open, and I was overhearing a conversation, and people were talking in Farsi, which like, well, anywhere in Iran, they are speaking Farsi. But it was so amazing. I was like, people are speaking Farsi. Like, you know, it was just, you just feel there's a part of you that does feel like a fish that has
By the way,
returned.
you can get that in North York here too as well. If you just just open the window and listen, I'm going to cut you off because I fear you're becoming a bad influence. I'm going to lose my whole staff. They're all listening, going, "Yeah, why don't we just go back to Iran? What are we doing here?" But your passion is palpable. Let me get back to the our food, our focus, the food, because I don't want to keep you forever, and I've got some specific questions that I'm really interested in. You know, what's curious about you, and what's admirable, I should say, is you were really a pioneer. I mean, your food blog around Persian cuisine has existed for a few years, and Azita, I feel like Persian food blogging and internet love for Persian cuisine seems to have skyrocketed all of a sudden. I'm seeing sexy photos of Fesenjun and Adas Polo wherever I turn online. Do you agree that this seems to become a trend? And if so, why? Why do you think that's happened now?
Hashtag food porn. But to kind of like unpack that a little, absolutely. But I don't think it's just been Persian food. Persian food has just been a part of it. Food in general. I think what happened is that once internet happened to food and brought food out of the exclusive domain of, like, let's say, food magazines and celebrity chefs and these TV shows like Food Network and all of that, where again we're like the domain of a very limited domain of certain people. Not everybody had access to that. The internet happened, blogging happened, and it gave this platform to people to express themselves. And one of these genres of blogging that really took off was food blogging. I'm amongst one of the first people who started blogging about that, but again, that credit actually goes to two blogs, Turmeric and Saffron, and My Persian Kitchen. They existed before anybody else did, right? And I remember reading Turmeric and Saffron and really liked it. And all of a sudden I had like an inkling. I was like, great, like under the pretext of talking about food, you can really like talk about culture. So that was for me. But after blogging, what really happened is social media, which really took food from this thing, which is nourishment and nurturing and whatever, and just made it sexy and made it really cool.
Right.
I mean,
Instagram, right?
Yeah. I mean, food went from being part of the culture to being pop culture. It's as cool now to talk about food as it is to talk about art or cinema or literature or whatnot. And again, going back to that part where you don't need to have a quantum physicist. You can talk about it. And also, food is like this thing which is primal, it's visceral, it's fuel, it's nurturing, it's nourishing. At the same time that it can be the most banal and mundane thing, which it is, because we have to eat every day, stuff our faces every day. At the same time,
but sorry, slow down.
Go ahead.
Slow down.
Okay, sorry.
You're saying so much. It's that there's, but when you talk about social media and you talk about how, I'm guessing that you would argue as well that this is, say Instagram and say posting those photos, it's imbued with a sense of identity and belonging related to the food, right?
Absolutely. I mean, like, let's say the primitive man, the caveman, would go and like go back to his cave and draw the buffalo that he maybe hunted and ate. And now, like, we go and take a photograph of the buffalo burger that we had. And all of it kind of like a little bit, it goes back to the sense that like technology may have changed. We no longer have the walls of the cave. We have like, our smartphones, etc., etc. But that need to express, to communicate, to basically just kind of like announce, I am here. Like, I think it's like, saying, I post to Instagram, therefore I am. It's one of that's that's one facet of it. But
I take a photograph of my food and therefore I am. Yeah.
Exactly. It's like you kind of like putting your banner of like your. But another facet of it, which is really more. It's more earnest and it's more emotional, is that this is somebody told me that in Korean a family literally translates to people who eat together. So kind of like sharing food is also like a very intimate thing as well. I mean, food is just like something that we humans love to explore and talk about, and it allows us to express ourselves. Like Franz Kafka, arguably, I think he's one of the grumpiest people on earth. He has this really interesting quote about food where he says that so long as you have food in your mouth, you have all the answers for the time being. And I love that saying, because in a sense, it kind of like tells you all you need to know about food. Food is comfort. I think whether we know it or not, and again, I'm just saying this, maybe it's like all bullshit and nonsense, but I just feel like whether we are conscious of it or not, all of us, we're always grappling with this existential angst of who we are, what we're doing, where we're going, and we think we all experience it on different levels. And food is this thing that is comfort. Okay. It's sensual and it's lovely.
So now that posting photos of food, of our Persian cuisine and food blogging has become more the norm, take me back a few steps. When you started writing about Persian food, and you want to start something that, as I understand it, was about Iranian culture, and food was this great portal for broader conversation besides your own abilities and talents when it comes to food. What surprised you about the reactions you started to get when you started your blog? What was the initial kind of opinion that people would give you?
I wasn't necessarily surprised per se, but we're going back, blogging has really changed a lot. But back then, when I was blogging, you would get a lot of comments. So that sense of community was like a lovely surprise. Actually, I do know how to answer this. Like, I have made a number of really good friends thanks to starting this blog. I think it wasn't that much of a surprise, because I knew that food was an attractive subject. And there's so many ways that you can, like with photography and styling, like even make it more enticing. So it wasn't necessarily so much of a surprise, but it was heartwarming, to see that people were interested.
It's hard for me to get a real gauge on this. Living in Toronto right now, where there's so much, it's fatovun, the food. There's a lot of Persian food here, a lot of Persian restaurants, caterers, people posting stuff. So it's hard to get a real sense of what folks are experiencing in Kentucky or rural Australia, or outside of the big cities in Germany. But do you think Persian food is going to have its moment, like the way we have seen with, say, Thai food or sushi, which have become these international, cuisines that you can find in any urban center in scores of restaurants that will serve them, and there'll be a fondness, and we all know what pad Thai is, and certain types of sushi. There's certainly more awareness of Persian food in the big cities than there was a couple of decades ago. Do you think that we're going to see that kind of explosion of Persian food?
I mean, absolutely. I almost want to say, God damn it, why is it taking so long? Because honestly, intrinsically, I think Iranian food is very enticing, with some minor exceptions like dur, kalle pache, whatever, which are like kind of acquired taste. The rest of the, culinary repertoire of Iranian food looks gorgeous, it tastes delicious, and I think it's inevitable, because food is a global thing right now. food is global, the conversation around it is global, and the presentation and experience of it. And I think all it's going to take is like, do you know that place called Italy in
Sure.
New York? Yeah. So
we have
I've
an
always,
Italy in Toronto now as well. Yeah.
oh, see, I've always dreamt of like having something like that for Iranian food, where under one roof you would have not just the kebab and the rice, which everybody will all know about, but all of those other things, from the sharbats to the cordials to the pickles
It's a great
to
idea.
whatever. Yeah, I like to have all of that in one place so that everybody can come and experience like the different degrees and all of the wealth of it, not just like one or two dishes. But a long-winded answer to your question, and I didn't even answer it. Yes, I think it will have its heyday. To some extent, a lot of like foodies, people who are foodie, they do discover Persian food blogs. They do comment about it, drool over it. A friend of mine says, like, if you want to get a lot of likes, just post a photo about TEDx. So, definitely for sure. In the US, this has taken longer, but I've heard and I've read that in London, for example, Persian food has been discovered, maybe not on the same level of being as popular as Indian food, becoming part of the normal fare of everybody, but maybe that will happen too.
So much has changed in the last 2 decades. I remember my mind goes to this a quick anecdote. I remember in the late 1990s, I was on tour with my band, and we were playing in Washington D.C. and we had I think we had a day off or something like that. So the boys all came over, band and crew, to my Auntie Alia's place, and she was so gracious to do this. I can remember it so well, and she made korma sabzi for everybody because she knows that I love korma sabzi. And all of the band and crew are guys who are back through generations in Canada, English, like they're not Iranian, and they reacted like this was the first time they'd experienced these exotic. It was so exotic, as if you've taken them to somewhere in the deep, And I feel like now, at least at a place in Toronto, I mean, these same guys would be like, I've had Persian, it wouldn't be as extraordinary. This was only 2 decades ago, right? This was only the late 1990s. So that change is definitely happening, and yet. I think about a conversation I had with a guy there's a restaurant called Sultani restaurant. It's a little strip mall off La Brea and Sunset in Los Angeles. And I talked to the owner there one time. He says that was the first restaurant, or one of the first Persian restaurants ever to open in LA. And I said, why isn't Persian food like sushi or something like that? Why isn't it everywhere? And there's certainly versions of this that have happened. There's Moby Dick, as you know, in DC. That's a little bit more of a fast food kind of version But he said the problem is that Persian food is still perceived as something very heavy. So most people, like, say, office workers or people who are looking to have a lunch, don't think of it as a kind of food that we're going to be able to just have a simple lunch with, because it's going to be too heavy to digest. And I wonder if that's a stereotype that we have to bust.
I mean, that could be a part of it, and I forget his name now, but that guy, we talked about him actually, the guy in New York City who
Saeed.
Yeah.
The Taste of Persia.
The Taste of Persia, and I think he has done he's done a good job of like introducing like kind of a very approachable and readily available authentic Persian food. But I remember actually I talked to him when I was in Manhattan like one time. I actually met him when he was working in the print shop as well. But anyway, we were talking about what he was doing, and he said one of the challenges of offering Persian food is how expensive it is. Like, just to like make korma sabzi, all of the herbs that it takes, he said like, it's just like.
Let me just explain.
Time.
This is a guy. Saeed Pourquet, I think is his name. Yeah. He's on 18th Street in Manhattan in a pizza place. He's in the corner of a pizza place. It's called Taste of Persia. If you don't know about this already and you live in New York City, you got to check him out. And definitely. Each day he doesn't have a grill, so there's no kebabs or anything, but each day he makes 2 khoresh and an osh. And
Yeah.
so you go there, and he's like sitting in the window of a pizza place, and it's delicious. It's great.
No, really good food.
Although,
but
as a
that's-
business model, the fact that there's one guy in New York City that we know speaks to the fact that hasn't really taken off yet, right?
Do you think it may have something to do with the fact that that actually goes back to the kind of the crux of like my TED talk as well, which is that like we don't, maybe us Iranians, because by now, you know, a lot of Iranians have made so many headways in so many facets, from Pierre Omidyar to, you know, Google, you know, one of the co-founders,
Yes.
to you name it, you know. And then meanwhile, like, I think maybe part of it has to do with that food maybe is not considered as prestigious to kind of get into and like make something of it, because I'm hard pressed, like talking to you, like, yeah, why haven't we kind of put it on the map? But
Well, I don't want to. I don't want to sort of have everything descend back into geopolitics. But
Yeah.
as somebody who grew up as a kid like you did in the West in the 80s, you wouldn't want to open a restaurant called the Iranian restaurant in anywhere in America or Canada
Persian.
for that matter. It just wasn't.
can call it Persian.
You could call it Persian, maybe. I mean, it just wasn't something that's going to happen, you know. So this is, you know, and still, I mean, we fight those kind of
absolutely.
prejudices. So that probably has something to do with it as well, right? But we have people like, I got to give him another shout out just because he's our brother here on the show, Chef Hoss in San Francisco, Hoss-pitality. He's working at Google and feeding the Google employees around, you know, across the world or wherever with a common menu, and he's infusing it with all this kind of Persian food. So, I mean, there's that's one way, right, where it becomes it finds ground in a broad population who are discovering and going, oh, this is delicious. What is this, right? So we just need a lot more of that, I guess.
Definitely.
Let me ask you two final questions because I've kept you so long. First of all, you asked me before we came on that you wanted to give a shout out to some really creative folks working in Iran and doing podcasts. Do you want to say who you wanted to give a shout out to?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. I love podcasts, and so that's why I'm really thrilled and happy to be on this podcast with you. And you're this is a great podcast, by the way.
Thank you.
For those people who do speak Farsi, the two podcasts that I would really, really recommend to check it out. One is called Metronome, and it actually has something to do with nostalgia as well, because in Metronome, the podcaster really dives deep into the history of popular songs and traces their roots, and it's a really like pleasant and informative podcast to listen to. Another one is called Radio Div, and that one also is centered around music, but what they do is that they take a city or a country, and in one episode they basically share vignettes of their history, literature, and music, and I find them both to be really, really amazing podcasts. And another shout out that I wanted to give was there's
a list of shout outs.
No, okay, I'll save that maybe. No, but like I don't know if it's I think because of COVID it's no longer happening or it's on pause, but aside from TEDx Tehran, which again I was so astonished when the first time I heard, oh my god, there's a TEDx in Tehran, and yes, there is. I've been to a few and they're just really wonderful and amazing, and I'm always astonished and amazed by the resourcefulness and all of the stamina and the talent that people, especially the young generation, offer and bring to the table. And I hope that they can keep that energy and optimism.
Well, you are
you're
such a fountain of energy and wisdom. Before I let you go, in as much as you see your blog and talking about Persian food as a way to educate people about Persian culture, maybe I can finish off by asking you a general question about our culture and how we are perceived. And I'm sorry if this is a tough one to get your head around right away, but just off the top of your head, what is the greatest misconception about Iranians today?
Honestly, again, that I think that we are angry. I remember Marjan Satrapi, the graphic artist who wrote Persepolis.
Yes.
I'm super proud of her, especially because I actually think her book Persepolis kind of revived the genre of graphic books.
Brilliant.
It really did that.
Yes.
Really did that. And I remember reading an interview about her, and she was saying that at one of her book signings, after she had read from her book, somebody came up to her and said, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know that Iranians laugh. I had no idea. And that just kind of like actually, to this day, right now when I was just telling you about it, it makes me shiver all over, because that is like such an, it's just like an dangerous thing to have that perception of an entire culture, entire civilization.
Right.
I don't know how many millions of Iranians there are. I'm sorry, I'm ignorant about that. You keep talking about my wisdom. I don't know about that either. But yeah, so like, I think the biggest misconception about us is that we are a nation of like angry people. And again, I'm telling you, if you guys go and read our literature, see our films, talk to Iranians, you will see that Iranians are hedonistic. We like to spread.
We're too gluttonous to be angry. We've got so much to eat.
Yes, exactly. We love to sit. We love to go to a park, spread our little blankets, have our picnic, make our samovar, make our tea, and just like, and somebody puts on, starts singing and dancing, and yeah. So I would say, again, in my humble opinion, that's the biggest misconception about us amongst a number of misconceptions.
Azita, it's been a pleasure. We have to do it again soon. Thank you for this.
Oh, thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Same. And I'm really proud and flattered to have this opportunity to talk to you guys. And I really admire the work that you're doing and wish you a lot of luck. And امیدوارم همیشه میزون باشی.
Oh, wow. You really are a listener. خیلی متشکرم. Thank you so much for this. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Take care.
خداحافظ.
Bye.
Azita Houshiar, a writer, illustrator, storyteller, TEDx Tehran 2016 speaker, and a lapsed attorney. Azita has a podcast and blog about food and culture in Iran. It's also an Instagram page that you should check out called Fig and Quince. Fig and Quince. Azita Houshiar joined us from Washington, D.C. today. Microphone's back on for Groovy Shaya, Captain Reza, the fabulous Kyan. I can't wait to have Azita Houshiar back on the show. She just had so much to say. It was hard to contain her. So many interesting observations. I very much enjoyed that chat. Who would like to chime in? Captain Reza, you're chomping at the bit.
I know. One of the things that she said that it could not have been more true, and I realized that, especially after I left Iran, is how curious, for the lack of better word, the Iranians are about other people's business, which is not
I see the tactless thing.
Yeah. She was like, there are certain things that culturally is appropriate to ask in Iran.
Right.
How much money do you make? How old are you? How much do you weigh?
Right.
Things that are extremely inappropriate to ask of somebody you just meet or a stranger and whatnot. And I never thought of it. Like it never occurred to me, because it doesn't happen here as often. Even when the Iranians that you meet, they assimilate it pretty well within the culture. So. But for her to live in Iran, grown up here, and it was interesting. It was very interesting.
Yeah, that's. Those people hitting me up on Facebook or Instagram, for the first time. Jian جون خوشحال شدم شما رو دیدم اینجا. توپلی شدی؟ It's always like, what? We don't even know each other. What? They're very we're honest with each other. Captain Shaya, Groovy Shaya. What did you want to say?
Okay, what I'm going to save from this interview for myself was that saying from Kafka that as long as food in your mouth, all problem is solved.
That's right.
That's really.
There was also, I think, therefore I am, the new derivation of that being, I take photos of my food, therefore I am. To explain this sort of food porn on Instagram. Kyan.
I'm no food expert. I'm sure many people are not. So I I gained so much from this interview. And one point I want to draw on that really stood out for me is when she said she was walking through some marketplace in Iran. I forget where it was. And there were these ladies making some sort of jam or something. And she was thinking to herself, this is a marvel. This is a culinary creation. If you were to bring this back to Western culture, hipsters would rave about it. You know, it would be in the New York Times. And that's so fascinating to me. I hope we come to that point in time where Iranian food becomes more mainstream, where it's a known fact that Iranian food is divine.
Well, also a point where it'll be easier for some of us to return and go to Iran, because when she just talked about just the sensory experience, adventure of just landing in Iran and in Tehran, and I mean, it's amazing, right?
Beautiful.
And you really look forward to that. Yeah. Because this is about food, I got to bring in our segment right away here, because he's been listening along, and I'm curious to hear what Chef Hoss thought of Azita Houshiar and some of the observations we made during that interview. Let me do the proper introduction. He's the captain of Cuisine, the culinary colonel, the Tabrizi talisman, the Farsi food meister, the Turkish tradesman. It's your chef, Hoss-Zareh, and this is Rook, Hoss-pitality.
Hi, this is your chef Hoss-Zareh, and this is Rook, Hoss-pitality.
Hello, Chef Hoss.
Hello, everybody.
Greetings from San Francisco, and greetings from Toronto. You're in San Francisco. You were listening in on that interview with the food blogger Azita Houshiar from Fig and Quince. Any observations you want to make?
One of the most important things that she mentioned, I want to repeat it again. She said, being immigrant in your own country. I wrote on my social media, being immigrant is very tough, but feeling immigrant in your own country, that's toughest to swallow. And she mentioned that one.
Meaning you went back to Iran and felt like an immigrant there.
Absolutely.
Right.
That's what she said exactly. Not exactly the word, but she felt that she's different. She speaks language different. People looking at her different. By even looking at you, people, they know you are from there, but you don't live there. They can even smell you that you are not from there. So that's very bizarre.
Were you familiar with her blog, with her site, the Fig and Quince?
Yeah, it was. I used to follow her, and then I had a pleasure when the first time, actually in 2015, I went to Iran after 30 years, and I met her. She invited me to one of these startup young generation group, and I met her. Very fascinating.
Oh, wow.
We had a great conversation.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Well, and I have also coded a couple of from her blog in my social media, and I love her writing skills and the way she looks at the food, especially Iranian food.
We've talked about this a little bit, and I mentioned to her, the work that you're doing, infusing Persian cuisine, say into feeding the bellies of Google employees around the world, with the work you do with Google. But I should just put the question to you about whether you believe that this is a moment for Persian cuisine. I mean, she agreed that there's been this huge uptick in social media interest in Persian cuisine, but she also said that's across the board, as food has become culture and food has become status in a way that people used to talk about, their record collections or their design or something like that, and now they talk about food as something to be proud of or something to display. Do you think that it is a particular moment for Persian cuisine, or is that a bit of a fantasy?
No, it is in the right track going on right now. But the one thing that I am happy that she mentioned too, we are right now not angry about our food. We are in peace that we know Persia used to be a huge country, and the food came from different regions, and it's also evolved and developed. So right now with young generation, we are okay to acknowledge that there's no ethnicity of the food. There's no authentic word doesn't exist. There's a document that where it started, but it's been evolved. So we are accepting that one. That makes the road very smooth for the bloggers, new generation, and also mainstream of the Iranian food right now in social media accepted.
This is your mantra, that food is constantly evolving and that there shouldn't be strict rules or parameters placed around Persian cuisine, right?
Exactly. What I like what she mentioned that when she was talking about the northern Iran, she was talking. My mouth was salvation when I was listening to her about this pomegranate, plums, and the wild pear paste that those are the paste we used to use our food about sweet and sour. Tomato paste wasn't in our culture, so we used to use this beautiful, delicious wild fruit paste in our dishes, and those are the one we want to bring it back, and those I will be interested in. And I loved it the way she described it.
All right. By the way, I think your mouth was salivating, not salvation. Although when you're speaking, your mouth is salvation to us here at Rook.
Well, I wanted to mention I used to be a little. You told me a couple of times in my interview, slow down. But now I can see the passion we have, same as Azita done. You slowed down her a few times too.
I know. So I didn't want to sound like I was mansplaining to her. But I really, she's got such interesting things to say, and I was like, slow down. You've got so much. Calm down. We got time, And yes, you're doing very well, by the way, Hoss. You've slowed down a lot. You have. I think my theory is that people who have a lot are very smart people and have a lot in their heads, and who aren't practiced performers necessarily in terms of oration, in terms of speaking. You're racing to get all the things that are in your head out because there's so much there. I've noticed that with you. You've got so much information to impart with us, and so I've been saying, just give us one or two and slow it down because we can't contain with the speed. Speaking of which, let's get to this week's episode of Hoss-pitality. So, what is it that you're going to be telling us about today?
Today, we're going to talk about the most precious and delicious and expensive spice in the world, saffron, which is saffron flower. Comes from flower Crocus sativus or saffron crocus. It's basically the flower has three beautiful crimson red stigma, which is dried and becomes saffron.
So saffron is a flower.
Yes.
Why it's a given for anyone who's Iranian, anyone who knows Persian cuisine, that saffron is a big part of things. Why is saffron important in Persian cuisine?
Well, it's right now it's mainstream on our food. We know how to use our food is for coloring, for aroma. The aroma is the most beautiful spice in the food we have. But it will be when we talk about history, you'll be shocked that the saffron was never used at the beginning for food. It was for medicine and perfume and dyeing agent. And later on, Iranian, they start using in the food. Even they was a saying, Greek, they say, don't eat that red saffron food is they are trying to drug you in Iran. So it was very fascinating to learn that.
It was used for perfume?
Perfumes, dye for carpets, medicine, and only close came to food was when they drop few pieces in their hot water tea or the wine as a medicinal aspect.
And when did it start getting used for food in Persian cuisine?
This one was around roughly about the 7th to 8th century in Iran, but before that was basically saffron native to Southwest Asia. And they documented from the Assyrian in the Baghdad area. But there's a hazy area. Some people they say is first time cultivated in Greece, or in Isfahan. So that's not sure. So it can be Isfahan, it can be Greece.
Why is it? What you mentioned earlier as you were describing saffron, you said it's expensive. It really is. Why is it so expensive?
Well, short and sweet is labor of love. But I can give you a couple numbers slowly so you can just let it sink. Number one, to harvest saffron, it has a 2 weeks time to harvest the saffron. Otherwise, it gets bad. That's number one. Number two, you have 40 hours of labor to pick 150,000 flowers. Each has a 3 stigma. 40 hours. And this gives you 150, about 1 kilo, roughly 2 pounds of the saffron. But that's a wet saffron flowers. Then you take the stigmas out of it, which is reduces by half, and then after drying,
you take the what out of it? I'm sorry.
The flowers, because the flower has a 3 thread, and the weight is almost reduced by 1/3. Because when you first pick the flowers, that's one labor. Then you bring it home by hand. You take the traits or stigmas from the flowers. That's the second labor. And right now they do some machinery, but damages the saffron. Then when you dry this stigmas or threads, you lose one 3/4 of the weight. So if you have a 1 pound of the saffron, you're going to end up by 4 ounces of the dry saffron.
Right. So a lot of work to get very little out of all of that.
Little, exactly, labor.
So you always have a teaching element to this to the hospitality segment, and it's what you make the video about and for. So what are you teaching us this week with respect to saffron?
Well, when you are in your own restaurant, you know how to use it as saffron. But when I start working, actually today is 3 years anniversary at Google. When you work in a big corporation,
congratulations.
Thank you. You see that how some chefs, they are not familiar with saffron, how they use this expensive saffron, and they're not properly using it, and your heart goes, or it hurts your heart because you see this expensive saffron.
Right.
So proper way of blooming saffron, it saves the money and it gives you the best product.
So you're going to teach us the way to properly bloom saffron.
Correct.
Okay.
There are 2 ways to do that. They're both ways perfect, but one is easier than the other one. You don't need that much of the headache. So basically, anytime you have a saffron dry or spice, you need a heat element or liquid. So in this case, we are doing it with one with the hot water and one with the ice. Ice is easier, then you don't have to burn the saffron, but the hot water, those Iranian, they use in the moms and grandmas.
Yeah.
They, by experience, they know the temperature of the water. But temperature is supposed to be between 95 to 100, or Fahrenheit, it would be like 190 to 200. You keep that one to give the best color and aroma from saffron. You don't burn the saffron flavor. But the ice, and putting on the ice is the best method.
Putting it on ice?
Yes.
How does that turn the saffron into? How are you blooming it through ice?
First, that's a good question. You take the saffron thread, and then you ground the saffron in the mortar and pestle or grinder, but make sure that piece of equipment always use for saffron, so you don't contaminate the flavor.
Right.
And after grinding, you put a spoonful of that ice, let it sit for 40 minutes, ice melts, saffron become part of, and you get this beautiful concentrated saffron.
Wow.
And this saffron water, your bloom water, you can put in the jar, and you can keep it between 1 week to 2 weeks in the refrigerator. And the ground saffron that you have, you can put in the jar, tight sealed jar, in freezer forever. So you don't have to do everyday grinding and blooming.
Yeah. You can only keep the liquid for 1 or 2 weeks.
Yeah, in the refrigerator.
Really? You can't stay longer than that?
No, it gets spoiled. Yeah,
Oh.
it's a little bit, when you do bloom it.
I've never actually done the grinding of the saffron myself. Like for years, my mom on Sundays, like when I'll visit her, will give me a little container of liquid saffron that she's made. When you reference the Persian moms out there, but I think she uses the hot water.
Yes, like that's right. Nothing wrong with that, but you have to be expert to use the right temperature of water, and they're expert. But in my case, I show on my video with thermometer, you put the water, make sure it's not too hot, so you have a right outcome on that.
So on the video, are you showing us both methods, the hot water and the ice method as well?
Yes, I am talking about saffron. I'm showing the grounding. I'm showing the hot and ice one. And also, since we talk about saffron right now, why do you see the saffron prices different in the market? Why is Iranian saffron expensive versus the Spanish? Saffron stigmas has a top part they call sargol and bottom yellow. The yellow one is the one we use it just for flavor. They don't have a color.
Right.
So the top one is expensive one, but in the market they mix those together and they color them. So that's what some of the saffron has at the bottom of the stigma, which is yellow, color dyed and added to saffron. So you have to be careful. So the best saffron to buy is those beautiful bouquet bundles of the saffron come in the jar from Iran. So top part is the best saffron, and bottom one is still you can use it for the flavoring, not for coloring.
Now, through my mom, I've learned to put saffron in a lot of Persian dishes that I would cook, like whatever, Hoss to Buy or whatever. What is your favorite application of saffron?
I like the color and aroma. I like rice puddings. I like my cream sauce, especially the cream sauce. It's at the end, you few drops of concentrated saffron in it. It gives a beautiful, vibrant color and aroma. And again, I mix my cuisine sometimes with Italian. They use the saffron too, but on your cream sauces or in his rice, actually, the aroma that gives it rice is amazing.
Of course, rice, yeah. I love this. I'm looking forward to this. Video is going to be at rookmedia.com, or on our Telegram channel, which is also Rook Media. Shaya, go ahead.
Azizam, is it a myth that people say when you eat saffron, it makes you laugh?
Yeah.
Great question. That's the medicine, but if you eat too much of saffron, it has a side effect and it can hallucinate you. That's good.
So you can
You are
get
right.
high.
Drop some saffron. Yeah.
So
it's like a
same time you're
drug.
talking about this, Shaya John. There's old days before they used to use the food. They use the saffron in the soldiers or the general in the bath. They believe that it helps you tiredness and also helps your wounds get better. But I have a great story since Valentine's but Cleopatra, we all know Egyptian a lady.
Cleopatra,
She used to use a quarter of cup of saffron in her bath, right, for cause of coloring and cosmetic properties. She used it before. This is funny. Don't laugh, please. She used it before encounter with man in belief that the saffron makes love making more pleasurable.
Oh,
Wow.
no laughing matter.
No.
So this was a very interesting. I want to say for that.
Is this true?
So, Chef Hoss, do you often bathe in the saffron then before your
I haven't tried it, but gave me
weekends
some
in San
ideas.
Francisco? Well, we've learned a lot. By the way, as soon as you mentioned that it's also a drug that can cause hallucination, Kyan perked up. She's interested all of a sudden.
Me and Shia looked at each other like, let's try it.
Kyan just snorted a line of saffron off of her desk.
Kyan's going to get the doctor to acquire bags of saffron for the next holiday. Yeah.
At the end, in regards to food, I want to please the audience, please do not use saffron for your tactics, because you wasting the money and it might give you color but not the aroma.
What?
The turmeric, poor man's saffron, you can use the turmeric for the color, because when you overcook the saffron, you lose the best part of the saffron aroma. So there's no point you use the saffron for tactics. After 1 hour of steaming, you ruin the saffron.
I love saffron taddy. You're telling me it's no good?
No,
I mean,
it's you don't know. The aroma goes, the flavor color is there. But since it's very expensive, it gives a flavor, but aroma goes away. But you can, at the end, you can drop some, you can spray the saffron on your tactic. That's fine.
I see.
There's a trick, as a chef's trick. When I do saffron, do the tactic, at the end, you squeeze bottles, you can do saffron water, spray it like a moisturize on the tactic. You get the gorgeous aroma from saffron to your tactic. Absolutely.
Chef
but
Hoss,
save the money, use the turmeric.
You are the best. You're saving us money and finding ways for us to bathe in.
I'm going to take a saffron bath after this.
That sounds like a tremendous waste of money. The 1/4 cup of
I love
saffron
it. Let's try it.
Chef Hoss, thank you. We'll see you next week. We'll look out for your video, rookmedia.com, to see Chef's latest video. This time, the best way to bloom and make saffron. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, guys. Always a pleasure.
That's Chef Hoss-pitality in San Francisco with Hoss-pitality. Again, see the video at rookmedia.com or our Telegram channel, Rook Media. Listen, before we go, I want to mention another BFF, another new patron of ours at Rook. For $10 a month, you become one of our BFFs. Thank you to Mina Mozaffari. Mina Mozaffari. Thanks, Mina. This is full time for Rook for today. I want to thank the amazing team who puts this show together each week. Producer Susan, Ponsa the artist, Thoughtful Nagin, the fabulous Kyan, Savvy Roham, Aghay Mehrdad, Master Muhammad, Chef Hoss, Captain Reza, and Groovy Shaya. Thank you to all of you out there supporting us and sharing our content. Please subscribe if you've not done so already. And as we mentioned, do check out our Support Us page, our Patrons page. You can become a patron for as little as $5 a month, $10 a month. It all makes a difference to us. Thank you. You can find me on Instagram at Jian Ghomeshi, I'm off to bathe in some saffron. In the meantime, Mizun Bashi.